Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the third State of the Game video that I have been putting together. This is still a newer series that I've been working on, and I do hope that it continues for a long time to come. Just to give you a quick idea of what you're getting into, in case you have not seen this before, it is going to be sort of a review of the previous month of the game, as well as a quick preview of what's to come for the month of September. So, as you can see on the screen here, I put sort of a outline of what we will be going over and what this will all be about. We're going to start things out with our power creep tracker. We'll move into reviewing the 20 gem pull that they offered for the goblins, which was the last one up, and goblins and garrison guards, my apologies. And then we will go into the hero leagues back, and we'll talk about all the fun stuff that comes along with that month-long event. Is very interesting. And then we have the soul exchange options that are currently up for this month. We'll go into our quality of life changes that we've been seeing throughout the game, and then we got a couple other interesting things to cover, like the Owl Covenant portal, like what was that all about. And finally, we've got meta changes and our September calendar review. These ones are staples. They're in pretty much all of these, where I'm going to talk about what's been changing in the meta. And then, of course, we dig into the calendar for the month that is up and coming, so that everyone can have an idea of what to be preparing for and what to expect in the month to come. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get things started by moving into our power creep tracker. Okay, so the power creep tracker. I do want to get into this, but I forgot to mention that this tends to be a longer video. So for those of you who are listening, just understand that this is kind of more like a podcast length than a quick video. You certainly have a full month to digest this, because I only do these once a month, right around the first, to make sure that everyone is familiar with what's going on. I do encourage you to listen, but so far they've been ending somewhere between 30 to 40 minutes long. I'm guessing this one will be somewhat similar. Now, let's get back on track and talk about the power creep tracker. For those of you who are unaware, this power creep is a mechanic that the game uses to help ensure that newer heroes are going to be more exciting than older heroes. This is a marketing ploy, but it's also a necessary marketing ploy by any mobile game to ensure that you continue to spend moving forward, and they continue to be able to make a profit, which allows them to keep the game running and everything else. If you're unfamiliar with how corporations work, basically, if you're not profitable, you are cut. So, if you're enjoying Empires and Puzzles and you want to continue to see more content, they must maintain a certain level of profitability. All right, so this also is something that they need to manage and control, however, because if they create too much of a power creep climb, what ends up happening is all the heroes that we take our time and effort in investing in end up falling off far too quickly, and it's not really worth all of our effort to invest in them. So, in order to come up with a healthy number where I want things, or where I personally think things should be for the game to succeed successfully, is I want power creep to exist at right about 10 CP a month. Now, there's always a little bit of leeway room. I'd say it could even go up to 15 per month, and it's still in an acceptable range. Not a great range, but at 15, it's still pretty acceptable. So I have been tracking this year's power creep so far, and by doing this, I simply look at the hero who is released at the very beginning of the month, the hero that is released at the very end of the month. I look at their CPs, and then I calculate the difference between them. So for January this year, there was a difference of 18 CP. February 14, March and April 6 to 7, et cetera, as you see moving down. But what's most important is talking about last month, and last month came in at a 9 CP change. This is fantastic. I give great applause to them, because this is under my ideal mark of 10 CP. I honestly do not know if this state of the game video is listened by anyone at Small Giant Staff or Empires and Puzzles, etc. Maybe some of the advice that I'm giving might be considered in what it is that they're doing, but I have no proof of that. I'm just happy to see it coming back in line, because as you can see, in June we saw a 37 CP increase, which was absolutely insane, and we can't really afford to do that and keep this game where it needs to be. So 9 is absolutely amazing, and that does bring our year-to-date increase of CP to 114. Now, my goal has been also to see this stay under 200 for the year. We'll see where we're at by the end, but if they're continuing at this pace, we're going to be well on track for that under 200 for the year. Okay, so that's just a general idea of what the CP tracker is, and I will continue to keep us informed on where we are at and how they are doing. All right, and the first thing that we are kind of digging into topics for this month, or I guess the second on our list, anyways, is going to be the 20 gem pull challenge that occurred. Now, this happened at the very beginning of August. In fact, I'm pretty sure it happened on August 1st. So it might seem like a distant memory for some, but in reality, it was the most recent gem challenge pull that we had, and also one that I haven't covered yet, because my State of the Game video happened right before that, so it was not covered there. For those of you who didn't know, this required you to pull 20 pulls worth of gems in order to become eligible to do a random poll to receive one of these 10 heroes. Now, they featured the goblins and the garrison guards in this particular one. And the question becomes, like, was this worth it? Like, was this worth doing 2 10 polls worth of gems, which usually ends up being anywhere from like 6,000-ish to like 8,000-ish gems? Um, that's a lot of gems, and you really got to decide if pulling one of these 5 stars guaranteed is worth that level of investment. For this particular one, given the fact that I actually had a couple of these garrison guards already, it was a little bit less enticing to me. And I also felt like the goblins were basically on the cusp of not really being that useful anymore. But I will say that both Scroll Beast and Grimsteel there are both very still viable and worth investing in. It's just I again already have Scroll Beast, so I mean Grimsteel would have been interesting. The Garrison Guards, I would have liked getting my hands on maybe Dima, but oh, and Pip. Dima and Pip would have been fine. But the reality is, I just didn't see enough value in it for me as a player, but I do see why a lot of people would want to invest in this, and especially newer players. Now, if you don't spend a lot in this game, it might be wise of you to save up for these gem challenge polls, because the positive thing about this is that you are at least going to walk away with a 5 star to work on. And I think that's very cool because I have done so many 10 polls in which I receive absolutely nothing, and that is going to be the case in a lot of your polls. So, like, to be guaranteed a 5 star does make a significant difference and does seem to be a pretty worthwhile way to go. Now, since this has happened, we have not seen an additional gem pull. I'm not sure entirely why. They were pretty much on a 2 week cycle to the day that they were releasing these gem challenge polls. This stop in between, I'm not sure if I'm very excited about it, but I will say it's not terrible right now because we have the Harvest Summon coming up, which is a gem-specific pull as well. The Harvest Summon does look very interesting this year. I like the extra pull mechanics that come from it. We can get into talking about that a little bit later, but in reality, having those gems saved up for Harvest Summon is not necessarily a bad thing. They have talked about wanting to continue these gem pulls, and next month I do expect there to be one. When exactly they release it, they haven't gone into that. They're also talking about whether or not they want to consider switching it over from a guaranteed 5 star pull to instead getting like ascension items or I forget what else, maybe like aethers or something like anyway, something along that line where you're guaranteed materials instead of a character if you do a certain number of pulls. That seems a little bit less exciting to me. I don't know if I would enjoy us switching over to that sort of reward system for the guaranteed pulls, but I guess I will hold my judgment on that and see what they offer us, and then decide if I want to make those pulls at that point. So, anyways, just a reminder, this was an interesting one. There were a couple of very good characters that are still pretty reasonable in the meta, but honestly, about 1480, I think, was the highest level character that was in here. So it was starting to fall off when you think about new heroes coming out at 16, or sorry, yeah, 16, is it right now? Or 1614 maybe, I don't know, something like that. We're way up there, so you're still about 150 behind the max CP curve. I think it was worth it, but only if you got some of the more higher end options here. All right, thank you so much for that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next part of our list. All right, so August did bring us back the Hero League. Hero League's an interesting part of the game where we have another type of PvP event going on that lasts an entire month. That's a very long time for a singular event. And in this particular case, they give out bonuses to certain classes, families, etc. And one of the, well, not one of the, but this particular round has Magic Towers, Slayers, Villains, and Circus heroes. Why is this significant? Well, the idea was to bolster the stats of some of these older characters to make them more relevant and fun in your, in your league, to spice things up and sort of change up the meta a little bit, etc., etc. Well, I do love that idea. What is kind of rough about this is that they have released costumes for these families. So, and since they are very recent costumes, their stats were already at the top of the pool. Especially with Magic Tower coming out each month right now. Slayers were not that old. Villains were not that old. Circus just came out. So if you have these characters at 90 with a costume, and the bonus they gave you of plus 80%, like, these characters got stupid ridiculously strong. Like, stupid ridiculously strong. Let's take Melina, for example. She's a very popular character right now since her costume's released because of her versatility. She attacks, she heals, she cleanses, she dispels. She can pretty much do whatever it is that you want her to do. And she was at something like 1580 with her costume, so she is very relevant in her stats, very powerful, very cool character. Well, you add 80% to that, and if you had a fully maxed out Melina before, in this particular league, her CP is now 27 something. I think it's like 27 like 60 or something like that. Um, that's that's literally bonkers, right? Like the strongest CP characters that are out right now are the Glass around like 1630ish. Maybe the Untold costumes are also around 1630. But like 1630 is a far cry from 2760. Like we're talking about 1,000 CP difference. That's insurmountable. Like when you think about it, if you're not trying to come to this league with some of these characters and their boosted stats, and you are going up against opponents that are 1,000 CP per hero if they're stacking multiple of them over what you brought, which is your maxed out characters, you're quickly realizing that you are going to get absolutely trounced. Absolutely trounced. You're not doing enough damage. They are cutting you down like you're nothing. It is a very strange scenario in which I feel like it's incredibly heavily weighted towards people who have pulled these newer characters, have them leveled and ready to go for this league. I don't think this was a very positive change this time around because I want League to be an exciting alternative, if you will, to some of the typical PvP options that are within the game. And I do believe in the idea of making some of the older heroes more exciting and bringing them up to date to be a part of all this. But I don't know if this can be done with new costume releases getting an 80% increase. I just don't know if you're going to create an environment that's inviting for the majority of your player base. It might be great for the people who have these, and especially for your like real big whale spenders that probably have a whole team of these particular characters that are not only pulled but leveled and ready to go. I mean, think about it. If we're talking 2,700 per character, and you can multiply that by 5, you're going to have some teams that are what, like 5, 10, 12, 5, like 13,000 CP. Like you can get teams in the 13,000 CP range going up against normal meta teams which exist somewhere in the 8 to 9k range. So just understand that like that is a incredibly vast power difference that I don't think is going to be well received by the end of this event, because as this event drags on, this is only week one. We have the largest pool of opponents to work from in this week. Each week, the bottom 25% is going to be chopped off, and we are going to have less and less opponents to work with. And that means that we are going to start seeing more and more absolutely stacked, monstrous teams as you go. And by the final week, you're just going to be banging your head against the wall if you don't have these characters to go up against these characters. I promise you, it's probably not going to be a lot of fun. And I do think this is something that they definitely need to address before we see another Hero League out, because it's just too much. It's too much to add 80% increase to brand new, fully statted out characters. So, listen, guys, good luck finding a solution that's going to make Hero League interesting, but not break it like you did this time. But like, I don't think this was the right approach, and hopefully, Empires and Puzzles picks up that note, and we will not have to deal with this level of headache moving forward. Okay, so that's what I have to say about the Hero League. It is still interesting to have the alternative, and I like participating to a certain extent. But again, I feel like I'm just going to like this one less and less as the weeks go on. All right, let's move on to our next topic. All right, so Soul Exchange. We did reach Soul Exchange for August 2025. This is the third Soul Exchange of this particular year. And let's talk about our options, what we got, whether we thought it was interesting, or if we necessarily didn't think it met the mark. And based off of what I've written on the screen, I'm sure you've got my opinion already. It's very clear to me that this Soul Exchange did not meet its goal. And I will explain to you what I think the Soul Exchange goal should be and why this particular one fell short. And we'll go into that right now. So, as you can see, I put a list up of all the possible options that we had this time around. There are some good choices. Like, look, I'm not saying the entire list is trash. I'm not suggesting that. For example, I think Uwe at 10 is a pretty good value, and probably what the majority of people ended up selecting if they only had 10 souls. At 15 souls, they did offer us a Dunes costume, right? So, like, a Dunes costume at 15 souls is viable CP wise. We're talking like 1580-ish CP, I think, for Bassett with her costume. So that's competitive and probably worth 15 souls. But that being said, I also think that Bassett might have been perhaps one of the least exciting Dunes characters they could have offered us with a costume. Like, it was a bottom tier Dunes option, especially in this day and age where the majority of new heroes are being released where they can't miss their targets. A dodge hero is not exactly the most relevant thing to pull anymore, but still good. Like I said, if you're in the 15 range, I still think that was by far the best value. But let's take a look at this 20 soul range. Like, what is going on here? This is where I'm a little bit concerned because I don't think that they did us any justice with the 20 soul range options. I'm not suggesting that these characters are awful. In fact, I think some of them were incredibly relevant characters when they were relevant. But the problem is they're no longer relevant now, right? So, and with new characters being released again in this like 16, 15 range that I believe that we're in right now, um, these characters just don't meet the mark. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at this. All right. So this right here is going to be a list of all of our current Soul Exchange options ranked by their CP. You can see that Costume Basset is leaps and bounds ahead of the next one, but that's because they are a costume and that's to be expected. It's the only costume offered. So yes, it's much higher than the rest. But as you can see, the next one up was Skarn, where we had them at 1431, but then no one else even broke 1400. That's including all of the 20 soul options, right? Garten got a little bit closer to 1389. Okay, like you're sort of getting there, but 1389 is still almost 150 CP points off of new releases, which is not, in my opinion, going to be that worthwhile to get now and just start investing in, right? Because we can all agree that with a power creep in place, you have a life cycle of effective availability for these characters to remain relevant and useful for your team. Now, if you're collecting this character now, it's halfway through its life cycle already. Okay, it's just halfway through it. So you've missed out on the first exciting half of it, and you're getting sort of the lower back end half of it before they reach irrelevant. And that's not what I would call super exciting, especially not in the range of 20 souls. Okay, let's be real. Someone had to pull 25 stars at a pull rate of approximately 1%, let's just say on average. Like 25 stars had to be pulled at a pull rate of 1% to be turned in to get a character that's already halfway through their life cycle. Like, this is not great. And that's just part of the reason why I said over here that we deserve a power creep that keeps up with the, or sorry, we deserve a soul exchange that keeps up with the power creep. Like we need this. Now I understand that we are not going to get brand new heroes. Okay, I do get that, but at most, and I mean this like with sincerity, at most I want the 20 tier range to be like maybe 100 CP lower than the current releases. Like 150 is already too low. Like I think the bottomed out lowest level that you should offer at 20 souls is 100 CP off of current releases. And you got to remember, this can only be achieved once every 3 months if, and there's also an if, that particular person has collected 25 stars that they are willing to turn into a singular character who then still needs to be leveled up, still needs to be invested in with your limited resource environment. So the reason to keep these guys so guarded and to offer us these older selections makes no sense to me. And if you need an example of why I say it's not keeping up with power creep, we can simply look back to the last soul exchange that occurred, in which I personally decided to invest in Meg as a healer. I felt like she was a very viable healer. I needed more healers for war teams. I was like, I'm going to spend 20 souls on this. So I did that. And Meg is maxing out at like 1430-ish, okay? 1430-ish for 20 souls, which is already higher than any option that was offered for 20 this time. So that's my question. Why are we going backwards? Why, with 3 more months of power creep occurring, making these characters less and less relevant, are the selections actually going backwards in CP? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, the power creep's moving up, the selections are moving back. This does not create an equitable system that's going to allow us to get something relevant out of this, not to mention the investment costs necessary to get there. So the 20 tier was an absolute flop, in my personal opinion. Like, it needs to come with something better. I mean, the way that things have been moving in such a fevered pace within the game for CP and the power creep and specials getting stronger and everything else, right? You need players to stay relevant. And you're talking about a soul exchange that only occurs once every 3 months. The reality is not even the majority of players can hit the 20 mark each soul exchange. They just can't, unless they're a big spender, in which case they already have better than those options to select. So like really, like are you worried about the whales getting something too good? Because the truth is they already have entire rosters that are too good. Like they don't need your soul exchange. They probably select a soul exchange just to use that character for the next soul exchange for all I know. Like it's just not like it doesn't really matter to them. And the players it does matter for, you need to do better. You need to do better for them so that they can try to stay relevant and meaningful within this game. So that being said, I think I've harped on this enough, but like we need to start getting a soul exchange that keeps up with the power creep with relevant selections, and I really hope that they consider that for the one coming in 3 months from now. I need more bang for the buck out of that. Otherwise, like I just don't even know if it's worth turning in this many souls. I skipped this one personally. I'd rather save up to make sure that I have 20 for the next one because this one was just kind of uninteresting. I had no interest in reaching deep into my roster to ensure that I could collect one of these characters. And I don't know, maybe different people had different opinions, but I do think we've got to do better with the power creep situation. All right, moving on to our next topic. Okay, moving on to the next topic here, we are going to get to our quality of life changes that occurred in the previous month of August, and we'll talk about how this has changed the game for the better or worse, and we'll go from there. So, to start things out, I do want to talk about the changes they've made to the food and iron crates. Now, when you go to use food and iron crates, it's gotten a heck of a lot easier with the UI interface changes, where they are going to list all of your crates right when you go to the plus food thing, and you can just interact with them there, adding as much food as you need in a much more streamlined and efficient way. Same thing with iron. Like this is just, I mean, chef's kiss. This is great because the truth is, it's very frustrating to keep flipping in and out of the screen, seeing how much more food and iron you need. Like I like being able to activate this in a faster way. It is a great quality of life improvement that really didn't require that much effort to kind of pull off. So these sort of changes that can improve our day-to-day gaming experience, but doesn't require them to like do giant changes to the game. I mean, they should definitely work on stuff like this every month. Just make the game a little more streamlined, a little more nicer of an interface for people to interact with. I love it. Like, and I think it is definitely something they can focus on that doesn't require a lot of give or take on their part and just makes their game better moving forward all the time. So it's a pretty cool concept. All right, next up, we've got the 5-star dragon token. This is actually very cool. I like this. This is the second one they've offered us. So basically, they gave us a quest. We complete that quest, and we would receive a 5-star dragon token, which will guarantee give us a 5-star. That was super fun. And the truth is, I don't invest at all in the dragon side. Like I'm free for play or free to play over there 100%. I log in, I collect my crates, I do minor things, but I don't even think I've unlocked the whole map yet. Like I still have things to do because I just don't think it's that significant to how I like to play the game, which is really mostly just the normal side of the game. But I am not ignoring it. I do think it's an interesting aspect. I just don't want to invest too much time and effort into the dragon side. So because of that, I don't have a lot of 5-star dragons. So getting this is fantastic. It's allowing me to feel a little bit more excited to log on to the dragon side of the game every day. So very cool concept. I love the fact that this is the second one they've given us. I've gotten both of them, and so now I'm at like 5-star dragons finally. But two of them came from these free tokens. So, I mean, at the clip that's going, it's a great way for me to receive them. And I'm very thankful that they offered this to us because they don't really give out free 5-stars very often. It's just not something the game does. So be happy about that. All right. And then we also have, oh, yes. The Feeding Heroes bonus EXP display. Now, I'm not sure if you have been in your leveling up screen recently, but you will notice when you're adding heroes at the top right, there will now be a bonus EXP display that is up there. This is a pretty cool concept. I like it a lot because it lets you know exactly how much bonus EXP there is. So, for example, if you're feeding blue heroes blue feeders, they will get additional EXP because you color match them, right? And I always knew that was a thing, but I had no idea how much extra EXP would come from feeding a same color feeder. I just assumed it made more sense to do that, so I've always been feeding like colors to maximize the amount of EXP gained. After looking this over, I've started to realize it's really not that much bonus EXP that they're offering for feeding color to color. So if you want to feed those to another character and level like, one character up faster by feeding them all the colors, you're not missing out on that much. Yes, you will be losing out on a bit of bonus, but it doesn't seem to be like that significant. And I never could understand that truly until I could see exactly how much bonus EXP is given, and you can do that because of this new interface option that they have added. You'll also see that costumes get a literal crud ton of bonus EXP. So I guess that also informed me that they probably require the same amount of EXP as a base character. It's just the amount of bonus they give is so ridiculously high that they level at the speed that they do. And I think you'll notice that too. You'll be looking at the amount of bonus EXP just going, what in the world? It's very cool though, and I do like seeing the details of how the game works on that level so that I can be more informed and make the best decisions moving forward in my leveling processes. So that's another very cool interface option that they added that I very much am enjoying. All right, moving past that, we'll get into the Red Lucky Summon. This is also a pretty cool thing that they added to the Three Kingdoms portal. And basically, it requires you to collect 10, or sorry, not 10, 100 red lucky coins. You get coins by participating in the war. Each one of your battles, if you fight it to completion, you're going to go ahead and receive 3 coins per battle. So, if you have been keeping up and doing your Three Kingdoms hits religiously, etc., this particular Three Kingdoms war that is starting, well, it's technically in setup phase right now, but starting tomorrow, is going to be the first one that gave you enough coins to get a free red lucky summon. That's pretty cool. Like, honestly, I'm not trying to be weird about it, but that is pretty cool because the characters that they offer in there aren't bad. Now, on that extent, I also want to point out that this Red Lucky Summon, you can buy these coins. For $9.99, I think they're offering you 100 coins. You can do a pull. I think if you buy it on the website, you get a little bit more, like 120 or something like that. If you're new to the game, this is probably one of the best values you could hope for. There are still some very reasonably viable characters in here, especially if you pull the costume ones, that are incredibly relevant, and the odds of you pulling a 5-star obviously is guaranteed at 100%, which does not happen often, and honestly, you can spend way more than $10 on pulls and not get a 5-star. So, I'm not advocating spending. I'm just pointing out that the spending in this particular situation gives you a high chance of success, and there is some pretty good options out there. I think I took a picture of this somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be easy to get to or not. Don't mind all this stuff. Oh, there it is. Okay. So yes, okay, there's the Red Lucky Summon. We'll go back to that screen in a second, and I apologize that I had to scroll through, but like I'm still learning how to do all of this. I'm still new to making videos, so just bear with me. But anyway, look at what the options are here. We have Costume Diachen, excellent healer. This yellow guy, I forget exactly how to pronounce some of their names. He's great. He makes counterattack minions, and he put fiends out on the enemies at slow speed, but still, it's a really nice effect. Cow Cow is giving you defense up, hit all, and huge beefy minions that will dispel when they slice. And then down here, we've got Sun, whatever, the red guy down here. He is going to also create minions for everybody that do fire dots as well. Then you have Lu Bui, or Lu Bu, I guess. Anyway, he is a person that puts fiends up on all the enemies, and as long as they have fiends, prevents them from getting buffs, etc. Some of these characters are just incredibly still very cool and viable, and so 6 out of 10 have a costume, right? 6 out of 10. So you have an incredibly high chance of getting a character that's going to be like over 1450. And well, maybe that's a little high. I'm sorry. Let me bring that back. If you invest Master Emblems, they'll be over 1450. If you don't do the Master Emblems, they'll be lower 1400s, but still incredibly viable characters and probably worth considering. So with that in mind, I do recommend that we consider that as a viable option for building your roster. Because like I said, everyone has different levels. I'm not suggesting you spend it. You don't have to spend it, but like especially if you're newer and you are looking for something to spend on, I think this is some of the most valuable bang for your buck that you can buy. Let's just put it that way. So that will cover the Red Lucky Summon. The next thing I wanted to go into, which honestly I kind of thought of this as I was recording, so I didn't pre-plan for this, but they did do a balance update last month, and I think it's worth talking about, mostly because this was the first balance update in a while that I felt was pretty reasonable. Like, it didn't get crazy. It didn't super buff people in a way that I thought was like unnecessary or unreasonable. In fact, it didn't really change the CP of very many characters at all. It did change and sort of like tweak specials quite a bit on certain characters, and I think this is a better way of doing it. Just making things stronger with CP is probably pretty easy. You're like, oh, look, they're stronger now by just adding more CP to it. But what it does is it creates an imbalance in, the power creep again, right? Like it just skyrockets them. And yes, it was an easy move, but it's not necessarily the right move. I appreciate the time and effort that they put into this particular month's balance changes, because I don't think they took the easy way out. They took a different approach to it, and it should create for a better balance, because that's what it's called, right? A balance change. It should literally create a better balance for the game, and I hope to see more of that moving forward rather than just blanket CP increases like when we saw Dunes and Untold 1 costumes. Um, gosh, like they got double buffed earlier this year, and it was like I'm still amazed at how incredibly powerful they are compared to other people. Like look at your costumes for season 4, but then they're maxing out at like 1300. Then you look at your costumes for Dunes, and they're maxing out at like 1580. So we're talking like a 280 CP difference. What's going on there, right? And then you go to Untold, and their costumes are maxing out at 1630. 1630 is still about 15 points higher than new character releases. Like it just that created an incredible imbalance, and I don't know what to do other than just wait for them to fall back in line with other things. But like, yeah, that was not the way to do it. So this approach is definitely better for overall balance. The other thing I want to touch on before we walk away from this is we do need to talk about Titan loot still. Um, it's not doing it. I talked about this last month. The bounty just is not enough. We put all this time, energy, and effort into them, and most of the time our bounties are coming back and they're just giving us Titan parts or battle items. And both of those are kind of insulting rewards in my personal opinion, because in reality, you give me 2 mana pots. I used way more than that killing this Titan, like way more. Like we're talking exponentially more. So 2 is negligible. It's pointless. It's not something that's going to move the meter at all. Same thing with Titan parts. I don't know anyone who's really struggling for Titan parts to this extent that we need them this many coming out of the bounties. It just I mean, great, I guess, but it's not it's not meaningful. It's not impactful to our overall game. And I think that's what we were looking for out of a Titan bounty, right? Because you're only getting bounties for 15-star Titans or higher. These are big, monstrous things that need like extra attention and time and energy and effort, right? So like, why are you then giving us rewards that are this meaningless? I do want to see, hopefully, the floor raised on that. So, in other words, I talked about this last month again, but I did say I want there to at least be 1 master emblem, if not 2, added to the Titan bounty as like the low end Titan bounty loot. Like, and you got to remember, we're only killing maybe 30 Titans a month, right? So, if you did 1 master emblem as the low end, we're getting 30 in a month from that, unless we get extra higher loot tiers, which we might get more master emblems. But like 30 is a rather insignificant amount when you really think about it. Like when you need 50 to get 1 character maxed out, and you can't even control what order these master emblems are going to come to you in, it's not too much to ask for. It's not too much to give. And it would certainly make people more excited than getting 2 superior mana potions. Like, I mean, I just sit there, I look at my screen in utter disappointment. Like, yeah, that was not really worth it. So I stand by that, and I do think that we need to do better in this department. This Titan loot is not cutting it, and we can get there. We can do this, especially if Small Giants it thinks about this on a level of what I think would be reasonable for the player to make this game more exciting, to keep this process moving along at the speed that they want it to move at. Like, give a little bit more so that you can keep the engine oiled and keep this game moving forward. And this is true for most things in this game when it comes to loot, right? Titan Chess, just as guilty. Like, I know you didn't talk about it, but there's a quiet nerf that SG did. There's a quiet nerf. Like, they are not giving out the same loot they were earlier this year in Titan Chess. And I am disappointed by that. I honestly am. I am. Other events too, I feel like we can offer a little bit more, especially like polls for things for events. Like, we can give a couple polls. When your poll rate is 1%, you can afford to give people a poll or two. Like, just do that, right? Like for events like Tower or challenge events, etc. Like, some people don't earn any extra coins for competing in the event. None, zero, unless you get to like some of the crazy higher tiers. And even then, like, it's hard for you to even get 1 full poll. Like, just loosen up a little bit. Like, offer a little bit more. It's not going to matter, because truth is, at 1% poll rate, they're probably just getting another Dawa to add to their list. So like, just let them have the Dawa, for gosh sakes, and we'll move on. Everyone will be a little happier. So that's my point on that. Hopefully someone over there is listening. They might consider it, because like, this really is, it's not going to affect their profit margin there, and it's just going to make their player base a little happier. And I think that's a win-win for everyone. All right, next up, we'll move on to our next topic. All right, so let's get into the next part of this video, and this is going to be talking about a very weird occurrence that happened this particular month, in which they released a Covenant portal for us that was featured with only owls. I mean, that was definitely different, especially considering owls haven't really been a thing for quite a while, right? And Covenant is normally a very exciting portal for people to get because it features some of the very best characters in the game. And it's not exactly a cheap portal either, right? We can all agree on that. It's definitely not necessarily a cheap portal. So, with that in mind, what in the flying feathered fudge is going on? That is an excellent question. And this was asked by a lot of people. In fact, I saw a ton of comments saying, "Did I miss like the memo on this? Is something going on with owls, or why are we getting this particular Covenant portal?" All right. Well, from what I can tell, this was an experiment done by Small Giants, and I think they even came out and suggested that, possibly in the forums at some point, as they explained the thought process behind this. So in conjunction or at the same time as this particular portal was released, they also had a Mimic up. So as people were doing polls, they had the chance to get the Mimic, and they literally even, I think, came outright and said that they released a Covenant portal with a 1 day duration, the same as the Mimic, to see if the Mimic could draw polls out of the portal. So it seems like they intentionally released a portal with some older character selections to see if there was enough draw and interest in mimics to get us to pull from this particular portal. And I do understand that on their end of things, this is something they need to do, right? They need to test to see how the market reacts to new ideas and different things. But I guess what my question would be is simply this: why? And I'll explain to you what I mean by why. I don't understand why they would want to offer us older heroes, right? So normally I can understand this in certain aspects of marketing, right? Like, so let's say you have a whole bunch of old product, right? That you spent money manufacturing and creating, but it didn't sell. So if you don't sell that, you're actually at a loss because you spent money creating and manufacturing that product. So you offer it a sale price and to hopefully at least get back the money you invested into making it. And in that sense, that makes sense. Or you add an incentive to get people to buy it, etc. In this particular case, when we're talking about a digital asset, I don't understand what's going. They don't have a warehouse full of owls somewhere that didn't sell. Okay, that's not how this works. So when you think about it like that, like why would you offer us older characters? It's a little bit insulting in a way because there is no difference to them whether we pull an owl or whether we pull a brand new character that was just released. It changes their profit margin in no way. Those ones and zeros are not worth more than the other ones and zeros. So I just don't understand why they would make this choice. It doesn't equate to something of value for the player, and it almost seems like they just want to do it because they can. Like, let's see if we can get people to pull from older portals if we incentivize it with something. But why? Like, what gain do they get, and what loss do we have to take as the player base? It doesn't equate to anything that makes sense. It just seems like it was a, I don't know, an unkind move to do to the player base, as opposed to just releasing a Covenant portal that was with current heroes. Like, just do that, right? Release that for the day. Give people that incentive to pull, uh, because you earn the same amount of gems for each pull. I don't understand what they were doing, but I do understand that this was an experiment to see if they could get people to pull from this portal with a mimic up, and that's fine. But again, it is an experiment, and the data gained might be valuable to see, but I just don't know what they gain from making us pull from older portals. So with that in mind, like that's enough to cover this particular topic. But for all of you who are curious, that seemed to be the concept. They wanted to know if a mimic could draw people to pull out of, I guess, an older portal. So thank you very much for listening to that little rant about what was going on with the All Owl Covenant that was up for a singular day. I hope that no one overly invested in this because I think we all understood that this didn't make a lot of sense. So let's go ahead and move into the next part of things where we will be talking about our current meta changes for the month in rating and make sure that you're all up to date and preparing for what is next to come. Okay, so here we go. Next up, we have got meta changes. This is something that I try to cover each month just to give people an idea of what's going on in rating, what to expect, things and so on and so forth. So we talked about this over the last 2 months. I'm just going to make a quick note at the beginning. I think we can all see that the age of the Mega Minion is coming to a close. For those of you who are familiar with wars, you can definitely see that war defenses have cleared out the majority of the garrison guards. There are still some like fan favorites sticking around. Fergus is there. I see Rosalind there. A couple other ones like that. Mon Charming even makes the appearances still. But like for the most part, people understand that they're just not as relevant anymore. Too many families are picking on them. So moving on from there. What I will say though is I think this makes room for a new era where we can have Mega Fiends have their time to shine for a little while. I do like Mega Fiends. I think they're great. We need more characters with Mega Fiends to really have it take over a meta, I think. But even so, I do expect to see more of them moving forward since the Mega Minions are no longer the favorite child, if you will. So next up, we will talk about other changes. The next biggest thing that I see currently going on in the meta is a ridiculous amount of Gurik. Gurik is definitely shining in a lot of these fights. He's very difficult to deal with, mostly because they made his slime revive undispellable. So like if he gets his that special off, like it just makes it difficult to bring people down, especially when you combine the slime revive with revivers. Um, I mean, at that point, it's just so hard to know whether you've actually killed anything. Like you're just like you kill it, and then it's back either as a slime, or then it's back up when the resurrector goes off, and you're like in a nonstop cycle of endless nonsense. It's not a lot of fun to go up against Gurik. I don't think. Like I don't enjoy it that much. For those of you who have figured out how to handle him well, that's great. For someone like myself, I still don't have a ton of counter characters. So my approach without a specific counter character to him has been to try to save up a couple damage specials and then burst him down. In other words, make sure he dies, and then as soon as he comes back in his slime version, hopefully have 1 to 2 specials to just power through his slime before he turns back into himself again. And that has been effective enough if I can get tiles to make it happen. Sometimes when you're starved on tiles, you're just in for an incredibly long fight. Worth noting, for those of you who haven't noticed, I did notice in the Skyfire War for the first time, they have added a dragon that resurrects. That's fun, right? Yeah, that's super fun. 15% chance to resurrect all fallen allies when that dragon goes off. Um, I'm not exactly what one would call the best math expert out there, but let me tell you, that dragon sure rezzed an awful lot of people at 15% while I was fighting him in this war. I also watched some other people fight him, and he was bringing people back at a pretty high clip. So I don't know if maybe that calculation isn't working correctly, but yeah, I saw an awful lot of resurrect from that dragon, which is incredibly irritating as you cannot remove the dragon from the battlefield, so you are never free of having to deal with the concept of resurrection going off. Yay. So anyway, yeah, moving on past that, that's a little frustration, but that's fine. Fully expect there to be a lot of these dragons sought after by the top end players, right? So if you're way up in the meta, you're probably seeing this dragon a lot. If you're like semi high up there, like myself and my alliance, we're just starting to deal with this headache, but it's going to trickle its way down. So just be prepared. More dragons, more resurrecting. Moving on. Okay, so that was that. The next thing up I want to talk about is where we're currently at. I still feel like we're living in the age of mana manipulation. That is the strong suit of what's going on right now. So I've actually seen a resurgence of Lunas and Manas back out in teams to mess with people's mana, and they are very effective at doing so, but they are falling off stats wise. Um, that being said, I still think it's very good to invest in your characters right now that have the ability to avoid mana reductions. So we're talking about your Toon costumes, 75% chance to resist mana reductions. You've got your Astral Dwarves that can handle it. Your Beowulf characters, which are pretty darn awesome. They're not only resisting it, but then they get boosted health and increase in mana instead. That's fun. And then you've got Fawns. I think they have a very good chance of resisting mana reduction as well. There's probably some other classes out there, but just understand that where things are at right now, investing in those characters are great, and it's going to help keep you a little bit more evened out instead of being picked on all day by mana reducing teams, which, is what it is, but it is happening a lot. Um, Other than that, what else have we seen trend wise with the meta? I would say we're seeing a lot of direct damage going out there. Um, the the attempts to sort of like create how do I put this? Uh, Debuffs are not necessarily where I see the majority of damage going out. It could be because we're living in this age of reflect heroes with all the glass and various other debuffs or protection against debuffs, etc. So we're seeing a lot of direct damage being the focus on what people are trying to do. And even more so, I think this is why we're seeing these new Three Kingdoms outlaw family absolutely taking over the meta, because not only are they doing direct damage, they're doing it so well with their crits, and their crits are reducing max health as well, and it is a devastating combination, and it's what's making them so monstrous in the current meta. You're going to want to try to protect yourself from this kind of thing. Um, I don't know how you really do it though, because even if you do bring boosted health, which is a okay counter, the Three Kingdoms characters when they crit and reduce health, it does even more against boosted health. It's so I mean, great. But yeah, just expect lots of quick direct damage that reduces max health. That's going to slow things down. So lots of Three Kingdoms action going on. In fact, I think they understand that they released a little bit too much of a monster in the Three Kingdoms characters because there is in the test servers right now a new buff coming out to the Kavala family heroes, and this is going to be a passive that they're giving them that will make them immune from critical strikes damage. So in other words, they'll take normal special damage, but no critical strike damage can be done to them, and they can't have their health reduced by the critical strikes either. So, obviously, they're already prepping something, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more passives or things like that going into effect, sort of like they did against the Mega Minions, because sometimes when you release something that's a little bit too strong, you need to start like bringing it back down. So that's really where I would want you guys to be focused on for this up and coming month. Expect a ton of Three Kingdoms until that starts getting regulated, and obviously stay away from the Mega Minions and protect yourself against mana reduction. If I see any other big trends going on, I'll let you know. This is very similar to last month's. It just means things are staying pretty status quo with the way things are going. All right, everyone, let's go into the last section where we are going to review the up and coming calendar for the month and go from there. All right, so we made it. We made it all the way to the end, the final section, and it's going to be a review of the up and coming month to come. So there we are, September 2025. We'll go ahead and take a peek at what we have here. So as we know right now, we're in the middle of Three Kingdoms. That'll be going on the 1st as well. One thing worth noting, though, that is not on this calendar, but from what I hear from my inside sources, the Harvest Summon should be coming in this first week of the new month. So I don't know if it's going to be released on Labor Day. That would be fun. That for us American folk will be off. Most of us will be off for the day, and we could take advantage of having a little fun with the Harvest Summon as well. But regardless, even if it's not released on Monday, it should be released pretty early in the week. It might be Tuesday because I think the final day may be the 8th. So if it is a week-long portal, we might not see it till Tuesday. And this is from what I've heard from sources. It's not 100%, but I do expect it to be in this first week, so prepare for that. Harvest Summon, of course, you need gems. Hope you have some gems. They didn't do any gem challenge pulls for like a whole month, so hopefully you were able to save a few, but we'll go from there. All right, so moving on to what's going on next, or this up and coming week. We have the War of Three Kingdoms that will be going on until, looks like Wednesday. Then we will get Ancient Underroot coming on the 2nd, which is fun. That should be Dragon Goodness. And then we have Judgment of Dunes coming on Wednesday the 3rd. The Beowulf Challenge is back. Oh, that's kind of fun. So on Friday the 5th, we will be seeing the Beowulf come back. And I do enjoy that portal. Those characters are great. Again, in this mana meta, you love the passive of them not being able to have their mana reduced and getting buffed instead. On Sunday, the 7th, it looks like we've got Costume Portals here. See that little key there? It's hiding, but it's there. And it will, of course, go into the following week. Then it looks like on Tuesday the 9th, we're going to get our Shadows of the Deep summon portal. And honestly, I still feel very iffy about Insanity Heroes. They're not my favorite mechanic in the game, but some people swear by them. Congratulations to you guys. You probably love gambling too, because that's basically all that is. It's craziness. Okay, let's see. Then we have on the 11th, the Alliance Quest Night of the Moth returns. So, Night of the Moth should be interesting. It is going to bring us some more characters, and they are so powerful right now. With the Moth Dust, it is one of the more effective routes in slowing people down, so they've become incredibly good defensive characters because of that alone. I really like it. I can't wait to see the new Moth that comes out. Even though I haven't been able to collect many, I'm always hopeful. Then we have Atlantis Rising coming on the 12th. Atlantis Rising is always a good time to consider doing your farming. There is additional loot given in the Atlantis season that you don't see in any of the other seasons. So if you're farming backpacks or recruits, etc., it's usually one of the very best seasons to do that in. So just be ready for that. All right, then moving on down here, we've got ourselves a Mythic Titan, which, I mean, some people might enjoy. I think Mythic Titan's a little boring, in my opinion, but to each their own. Another Ancient Underroot, so we're going to be getting ourselves another Dragon pull in that month. Then on Tuesday the 16th, we have Goblin Village coming back. Now, I do know for a fact that we are finally going to see some new goblins. They are in the beta server, so the question is, when are they going to go live? It might be this up and coming month. If not, I don't expect there to be new releases necessarily. I don't think they plan on making new garrison guards. So if anything, we would see some repeats of some of the more popular ones, like we saw Fergus last month. Well, if they do it this month, maybe we'll see other ones like Raz or Maze or I don't know, any number of the very popular ones. They'll release a portal maybe with them just to keep people interested in pulling. I'll be honest with you, I pulled for Fergus last month. I did. I didn't pull Fergus, That would be an even more exciting announcement. But anyway, the point is that Fergus is so good I still pulled for him, even though he is getting older. So moving on past that, we've got our Tower of Magic coming out on the 17th. Tower of Magic, again, one of my more favorite portals. I do love these characters. They've been fun. I'm still hunting for my first Magic Carpet hero. Maybe it'll be this up and coming month. I don't know. I do think they're fun. The full flight momentum is a fantastic mechanic that really speeds them along. So even though they seem slow, they're not really all that slow with that in play. So just keep that in mind. Kind of fun. Then we have Untold Tales Mysteries of the Deep coming on the 18th. Was that Thursday the 18th? So back to Untold 1. Don't know what they're doing with this. Like I think they may be done with releasing new characters in Untold 1, and we're just gonna cycle through costumes at a random clip. I mean, they're not bad. The stats on them are great because of that double buff thing that we talked about earlier in this particular broadcast. But like, look, it's just not that exciting when you don't have new heroes coming out of a portal. It's fine because they're still very relevant. But again, I don't expect big things unless we get the release of a new family. But since they haven't really been on beta, I'm guessing not. All right. Then it looks like something's hiding there. Is that Astral Dwarves I see? Oh, yeah, there's the Astral Plane. Okay. So the Astral Dwarves will be coming out on Sunday, the 21st. Again, great family to be collecting right now. Some of the best passives and family bonuses in the game are coming from these Astral Dwarves. Biggest problem, though, is their pull rate, right? Like, so the only way you're really getting them is at a 0.5% pull rate from their portal, or maybe from Covenant if you're lucky. So yeah, I mean, great. I still pull from them, but it's hard to get them. All right, then we have a Shadows of the Deep. So a second Shadows of the Deep summon this particular month, happening on the 23rd. Yay, Insanity. And then we have a Covenant Quest. Okay, so that's kind of fun. We will be having a Covenant Quest next month, which gives us a chance to collect some coins for some free Covenant pulls. That doesn't happen all that often, so hooray for that. Then we have a Contest of Elements happening on the 25th. So that's actually pretty cool too. I don't know what color they're going with for this. I guess we'll see. I think we've cycled through the colors, so I expect yellow to be coming back around, but I don't have proof of that. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Following this, we have the Hero Coach. Okay, so that's actually a very important date. So keep that in mind. The 25th, Thursday, the 25th of September, brings you Hero Coach. A lot of us wait for this with bated breath. I know I am. I have a list of potential hero coaches because I've been managing to pull quite a few of these newer costume characters. I can't wait to get one of them to 90. So I haven't necessarily decided on which yet, but I'm sure a lot of you are waiting for this. I still recommend this. If you are doing Hero Coach and you have one of these new costume characters to invest in, please do that. Like, you're going to get an incredibly relevant character for minimal investment. I think it's better than taking a 2-year-old character to 90 because unfortunately it's still 2 years old and its stats will reflect that. So this is clearly a good choice for costumed characters. So that will be coming on the 25th. Keep that in mind. Then we also get, looks like another Three Kingdoms portal will be coming on the 27th of the month. So these outlaw heroes are great. I mean, they're just great. I think all of them have been just wowzers of characters, except for the Peekaboo purple guy. He's he's been a little underwhelming, but the rest of them have been just absolute monsters. And I fully expect that we're going to see a few more monsters out of there before they're done. Then, whoop, a little bit too far. Let's go back in here. Yeah, there we go. Then we're coming up on the very end of the month. We've got another Ancient Underroot sneaking its way in on the very last day of the month. So 3 different dragon portals in that month, so that's interesting to keep in mind. But that covers the majority of everything there. So at this point, you have made it all the way to the end of the video, and if you're still listening, I appreciate you tuning in. I do love this series. I understand it's a little bit longer. It's a great thing to kind of listen to if you're maybe at work and you're just trying to like have something to listen to in the background while you're plugging away on some of your mundane regular tasks, stuff like that, or you're cleaning the house and you maybe want something to listen to, all of that fun stuff. I am making this content mostly originally for my guild, but I'm noticing a bigger following of people from outside of the Alliance. That is fantastic. I would love to be able to grow and continue to produce this content for years to come. I do think of it kind of like a time capsule, so that if you want to look back, you can see what was going on maybe a year ago, etc. I think it'll be very cool to look back on some of my videos and see where I was at in that particular moment of my Empires and Puzzles playing. So we'll keep this going, and you just keep tuning in. Oh, one last thing to mention is at the very bottom corner of my video, there is a subscribe button. If you like what you've been listening to, go ahead and click on that so that you don't have to search for me later or have me come up on my For You page, etc., etc. And we will see you next month. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.